Okay, into Clinch with Greg Nelson and Andy Gron and Nat McIntyre, where we tackle and grapple everything martial arts. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our sponsors and our people that we train under, Pedro Sauer, pedrosauer.com, Gurdana and Santo at anasanto.com, Eric Paulson, ericpaulson.com, all right, and the Academy MN.com, the academymn.com.
Right on. So today, the question that we wanted to try to hope to answer is how to be a good training partner. I think a lot of times in our practice, we focus a lot on the techniques that we're doing, and we focus a lot on our own training. But the rising tide lifts all boats. So give me your thoughts, guys, on how to be a good training partner.
Well, first and foremost, pretty much my entire life in the martial arts has been isolated around my training partners. You know, when Rick Fay and I first started, we would spend hour and a half, 2 hours in the middle of the day just training specific things, and that just became normal. And then when he couldn't do it, then David Leach came in and all the rest of the guys, and we just kind of formulated our own workouts around. We all had our training partners, we all held rounds, we all did what we had to do, but it was all about getting a good training partner and training.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a good number of injuries from people not taking care when I was training with them. And I just think that if you're not thinking about your partner's health as well and their benefit, you're just missing a big part of the training. And plus, no one's going to train with you after that. So, I mean, this is a huge part of the equation, is being cognitive and being mindful of your partner's benefit and their training as well. If they're not getting better, I think you're missing out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know that the number one reason that we find that people quit is because of injuries and fear of injuries as well. And that a lot of times can be attributed to people training on people instead of with people. And there tends to be a focus a lot of times that is improving on what you're doing, and you're not necessarily aware of what the other person is doing. So if you're, I can remember early on hitting pads, and the person holding the pads would just be lazy with it, and they wouldn't have the pads. They'd have them all out of alignment, and I couldn't ever get a solid hit in, and I would be really frustrated. So, and I know that happens a lot in the class. So, like, if I'm a student, how should I handle a situation where the training partner is not sort of up to snuff? I mean, how much instruction, how much interaction should I have, do you think?
Well, I'm thinking it depends on what and how often I'm with this person, obviously. If it's like an isolated case, hey, sometimes you got to deal. But I would say in a lot of situations, a lot of interactions, you could say, hey, if you held the pads like this, it would be better for your arms and shoulders, even though you're correcting the pad holding for you. But you say, hey, this will really help your arms and shoulders when I'm kicking, and all of a sudden you've corrected them, but at the same time, they're feeling you're doing it for them. And you are, but at this big time, you're doing it so you can hit a solid pair of pads correctly.
Mm-hmm. People have a hard time asking another person to slow down or go a little bit easier if someone's way bigger than you, or they're sparring way harder than you feel comfortable with.
That's another huge problem I remember, is I would get paired up with someone who was sort of hitting the pads sort of spastically, and they would miss.
Right. And then people don't want to say anything because I don't know, it's Minnesota.
Hey, I mean,
Midwest, they don't want to talk.
I had a guy way back in the day yell at me for not having the pads up fast enough, and it was probably my third class. And he was literally angry.
Yeah.
And I was 17. Get the pads up. I gotta.
He should have been helping you. Yeah. I mean, there has to be some give and take there, and rather than, especially with sparring, picking up the pace when they go hard, then you're gonna go harder, and then pretty soon you guys are brawling. I mean, maybe that's fun sometimes, but it's not the best way to go about it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, after being in Thailand and Brazil, how good the team spirit of the training is.
Yeah.
Like the awareness of each other's injury prevention and of size. I noticed that in coach kids wrestling, and I notice that there's a lot of attention paid to how the kids are paired. So it's very rare that you'll ever see like rules young tiny kids paired up with big heavy older kids when you have a age group and kids are growing at different rates. And
well, why would it be any different for adults, really? I mean, if you think about it,
it really shouldn't be. It goes to the point where the coach will make 2 or even possibly 3 groups of 3 to make sure that kids are properly matched by size for drilling and live wrestling. And I think that's a really important instructional technique from the coach's perspective to help people cultivate good training partners.
Well, what I find also within my classes, a lot of the guys and girls that are there will naturally just partner up with each other because they've trained with each other, they feel comfortable training with each other, and if a bunch of people are feeling comfortable working with one another and they're doing well, a lot of times I'm like, that's perfect, whatever, that's great for the actual technique part. Then when you're doing a live rolling, sometimes you got to obviously pair up some people. But right now, I think for the most part, the people that are wrestling or grappling with another person, even if they're bigger, stronger, more advanced, they're not really going nuts on them because they've learned. They've learned. The ones you got to watch out for are the new people that are bigger, that are thinking that they have to prove something, or they don't understand it. Hey, this is not a match. This is not kumite. This is just training right now. You don't have to win. You just have to get better. You have to feel it. And sometimes people have to learn that because they think that coming into this environment where you're grappling or you're sparring, and it's about, oh, I got to fight back, instead of, no, you're just training.
Yeah. So one of the famous sayings that you have is train with your partner, not on your partner. And really what I think what you're saying is that both partners should be benefiting when you're training. But what is it like that drives people to train on people? Like are all those people sadistic?
Some people maybe bullies. You can see that, and sometimes you're like, geez, every time the person has the opportunity to one-up somebody or to kind of bowl them around, they're there, they're doing it. You're like, whoa, got to check this. And it's not easy sometimes because you want to have the person feel good about themselves, but at the same time, you got to they have to learn how to train with people. And I don't know, it's hard because what's their psychology? What's their background? What's their makeup?
Maybe they're not aware.
Sometimes.
That's what I think. People are not aware of it, that they're doing.
Biggest reason, not aware.
I think they're not self-aware sometimes of how hard they're going. They don't understand their body.
Yeah.
Or their mind, what's happening in their mind.
They don't know their own strength.
They're new.
They don't know their own speed.
Some people's fight or flight, too, just on the mat is through the roof.
Absolutely.
And
in jiu-jitsu, it's very common that one person goes a lot faster than the other person, and it can be, you can get feelings of fear and claustrophobia when someone's bigger and stronger and trying to smash you, or even if they're like 10 times better than you and they just start to crank real fast and real hard and train on you. We've all had those days where we went home with like a cut lip, or your teeth got smashed into your lips, or whatever, and you feel bad about it. Like, what can you do from your own training perspective to start to get benefit from when someone's trying to like crank on you or hit you hard? Because what I do is I try to go to defense, and I think of defense like a type of guard, and I will let people mount and knee mount and take back, and I just go into rock solid defense and keep my limbs contract, my neck protected, and I slowly work to stay safe.
If you have that in your toolbox,
well,
that you do. But if you don't, then that level of fear and claustrophobia and all those things are gonna.
Yeah, and you don't actually know
what to do. Yeah.
That's why Professor Sauer is always so mindful about teaching about defense and how important defense and survival skills are. Because remember, jiu-jitsu is supposed to be for the weaker person to survive against a person who's bigger, stronger, faster. It's not to overwhelm them and take them over and attack back. It's to survive. And so that's such a huge thing. And for me personally, that's what I do, the same thing. I go right into kind of the defense, and I think, man, this guy's big, he's strong, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's maybe just starting out. This is more like a real self-defense situation than someone who's grappled for a while. So it's like, okay, I'm going to learn how to defend now. How do I stop his arms from doing? How do I control him? How do I get to a good position? And then when I reverse it on him, I still just go nice and relaxed. I don't turn it up, because then you're teaching them. Yeah. Oh, you get on top, you turn it up, you go crank. No, you get on top, and then you let the person re-sweep you, and you do it again. And so you start to teach them how to play, and that's a big part.
Well, hopefully they do that when they go with someone else who's lesser than them or smaller. Or
I mean, I remember
that's the culture.
Ishmael Bentley doing that with me in grappling back in the day. You know, he would force me to work defense a little bit, not too hard, and then he would let me achieve moves here and there and try to show me how to be relaxed, and it really helped me a lot. And also I can think about a number of kickboxers, James Cook and Pat Barry, right off the top of my head, that would just play a lot of defense with people that they knew they could beat, specifically to work their own defense and help people get better.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Give those people a little bit of confidence. James barely ever sparred super hard and offensively, you know. Sometimes he'd get a little aggro, but for the most part, sparring was a time for him to see stuff and get ready. And offensive was on the pads, shadowboxing, and bag. And he knew how to shift the gears. And I see that a lot in the Thai style training as well.
Yeah, the bottom line with, you think about Thai boxing, or you think about wrestling, especially, or any time where you're competing a lot, and you're competing in a way that you could potentially get hurt, and you have to try to replicate it, but at the same time, if you're fighting every day, you're not going to be there for the fight.
Yeah.
So
your body's going to be wrecked.
Yeah, and the people, and they already know they're fighters. So it's like, okay, let's just train to get better, because ultimately it's about the day in the ring, that I got to be as healthy as I can be, as smart, as strong as I can be, not have any injuries. And so that ability to train and be smart and know when you can go full out, like on Thai pads or on the heavy bag, focus mitts and these things, that's where I can punch, kick, knee, elbow, full power, and not worry about injuring anybody, because you got a good holder who's mimicking. That is such a huge thing. And in wrestling, there's a lot of drills and situations. And yeah, you're doing live matches, but the goal is, not to go crazy in there, but it's to be prepared for your match. It's to be prepared, not beat up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going at 100% full power and speed, and someone's not getting injured, you got to ask yourself, what am I doing
wrong there?
Yeah, how
and
hard
if you are getting
actually
injured, you're not going to be able to train again.
Yeah.
And the people that improve the most are the ones that know the most moves and have the most knowledge about training.
They
And
can
the
train
only way
consistently because
the
they're
only way
not
is
injured.
to get there is consistency. And so
Consistency's king.
having an awareness of injury, and also not just injury, but like your body and your brain requires energy to perform. And if it's broken down because you went 100% every single day, and you literally went 100% every day, you will not have the energy to get good.
Well, one of
impossible.
One of the best things that I think happened, especially this was in wrestling at the University of Minnesota when Ivan Ivanov came, and he was just watched what was happening in practice, and the first thing he said is, "You guys are going too hard every day."
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd change the program, but sometimes they'd go really hard, and then the next day they'd come in and they'd drill. Yeah. That's it. They'd drill a little bit, maybe do one hard match. And then what would happen, the guys would recover, they'd come back the next day, they'd be hungry, they'd want to go hard. So then he would watch the vibe of the room. So he'd push it, but then as soon as he saw that it was starting to go decline, he would stop. Mm-hmm. And then it would be drilling time. And what happens? It's the first time ever that a team has had 10 All-Americans.
Yeah.
Nobody, everybody was pretty much a lot healthier and being able to be at their top of their game for the most part. And, who knows if that's going to happen again, where you have that many All-Americans on one team.
Yeah.
Results.
Yeah. And I think, too, talking about consistency, coming in there and what you see at the higher levels of wrestling, anyways, as the levels go higher, the drilling increases, and the live matches are not as prevalent because they understand live training. They understand what they have to do, so they can spar a lot more. And sparring in wrestling is like it's like timing sparring in Thai boxing. They're mimicking the game, but they're not cranking on each other. They're not full out. They're giving the people, their partner, the pressure or the feel that they actually want for the match that's coming up. Hey, you're going against this guy. This is his pressure. This is what he does, and he just keeps doing that same thing back. So you drill it and drill it and drill it.
Yeah, and when you say drilling, it's more than just sort of passively walking through the move as if you're first learning it. When people in wrestling are doing drilling, there is a little bit of resistance in there.
Yes.
Right?
You have to have resistance. There has to be enough resistance. No, there has to be enough resistance so that you're actually physically doing the technique correct. So that you're getting your structure kind of tested. You're getting whether you're in a good placement, if your balance is there. So there is enough pressure that you're getting a realistic feel, but it's not stopping you from being able to do the move correctly.
Yeah, that's that distinction that Askren was talking about, where BJJ schools are doing it wrong. I think is that, there are different sort of levels to drilling in, specifically in wrestling, and when you add progressive resistance or little bits here and there, the skill level. I mean, imagine if you went into the weight room and you tried to bench press 225, 30 times. You never done it before. You got to start with a lower amount of weight to begin with, and then slowly add more and more resistance to build up to progressively to the highest amount and to the highest level. And the same thing has to happen in martial arts, right? And so with that, I wanted to bring up another kind of co-topic, which is, using open training and being self-motivated, right? So if you're going to be a good training partner, like, you need to be self-motivated. You need to be able to be a problem solver on the mat, in the ring, in the cage, on the pads, in the street, wherever. You need to figure that out. You need to be driven, and you need to get with the partner and get in and practice the moves. And, I just want to put that out there, and I want to hear you guys' thoughts on how can we get more people to set aside some time in their practice to do some extra drilling and extra outside of class practice where they have to kind of rehearse the moves and remember them on their own and problem solve.
Well, I know for me,
because that's our culture. That's what we've done.
I think
emphasizing
that.
I loved doing that. I loved drilling and mimicking different fights that might happen and how to deal with it, and how can we do it on the Thai pads, how can we do it on focus mitts, how can we do it in glove drills, how can we do it on the mat, trying to replicate those things. And then, like you said, there's a time where you are very easy with it, where there's very little resistance, and then you start adding a little bit, and as soon as you get to that point where you're now kind of failing, it's like, okay, let's pull it down a little bit so we can develop really good reflex. But you know what? I think a lot of people don't like to do that because it takes mental effort.
Sure.
Live grappling, you just go out there and you don't have to think, you just have to do. Whereas when you drill, you have to have some focus, you have to have a direction, you have to have discipline, and you have to have a partner that's willing to give you back the feedback that you require, and has the same goals in mind. They're disciplined, they're consistent, they want to get better. And when you find somebody like that, that's like gold. That's like gold.
Well, all of us coming from Thai boxing, think of all the solo work that you do in Thai boxing. All the running, skipping rope, hitting the bag, shadow boxing. It's all solo work. And so you're already...
But one of the things that we did when we did our own solo training was we would write out a plan.
Yeah.
Day by day, week by week, towards it. And a lot of times it was towards a competition. It doesn't have to be, but a written plan of what moves you're going to work for the next 3 months, or what things are you going to work on for the next 12 months, what in the next 3 years, what in the next 5 years. That's what's going to get you the results. If a ship leaves port and it doesn't know where it wants to go, that ship's going to float through the ocean. It's never going to get to where it wants to go. So I think key in open mat, open gym, and drilling outside of classes, you got to develop a written plan for yourself and figure out the techniques and the tactics / strategy that you want to implement, and then get to work on it.
Yeah, the bottom line
Hammer
there
it
is
out.
the statement that I've heard a million times in the last couple of years is the common knowledge is not common practice. You can tell people over and over, hey, pick the moves that you want to work, get your partner, have a time set, and start to drill. Oh yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, have you done it? Did you do it this week? Have you done it in the last month? Did you do it this year? And a lot of people don't because, and I tell you this, those people that do, it's no surprise that those are the ones that all of a sudden are the ones winning more. Those are the ones that are becoming, the champion fighters because they were willing to do what everybody says I know, and they were like, no, I do. Sean Shirk was the greatest example of that.
Yeah.
He would ask two people, hey, Andy, can you come tonight at 7:30 and drill? Okay, great. Hey, Nat, can you come tonight 7:30 and drill? And then he would write down a whole training routine if both of them showed up, if one of them showed up, and he had one that if neither of them showed up, because that happened a lot, and he would never be pissing and moaning. He would look at the clock. Oh,
Yeah.
5 minutes late, they're not doing it. He would just start setting up his drilling sessions. It'd be ground and pound bag and shooting on cables. He would never bat an eye because he had a goal.
Yeah.
He was self-driven. He was motivated. And so, guess what? Comes a champion,
Yeah, the attitude, like, whatever, I'm going to do that. I'm going
Doesn't
to
matter.
achieve regardless of what happens.
Doesn't matter.
You know?
That's that drive.
Yeah. But
That's
solo
tough.
training is really, really, I think, key too as well.
Super
in
important.
open mat. Shadow boxing, shadow wrestling,
heavy bag.
all the gymnastics
Ground and pound.
and
Oh, yes.
gymnastica naturale for jiu-jitsu. It's incredibly beneficial for
Whenever
all
you
students.
spend that time doing that solo work, you're thinking about what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
It just, that mental effort is going to make you so much better.
You're taking it from your conscious mind and
Yeah.
embedding it in your subconscious mind so that when you ever have to do this stuff, you can actually do it.
And it takes a different discipline to be by yourself and drive yourself and push yourself.
I think that's harder for people now.
Yeah.
I think people are their attention is just being pulled apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so this stuff is super important to keep people focused. I think it's
I remember,
Well,
I
it
think,
can develop your attention muscle,
absolutely
your willpower
yeah,
muscle
absolutely.
to train on your
Yeah.
own. I mean, your willpower acts just like a muscle does in your body. The more you use it, the more habit you have of achieving things and doing things, the more you can achieve other things. And we hear that all the time from our students about how, they came in for, to lose weight or whatever, and then suddenly they're like competing, and suddenly they're, trying out for a new job, and they're moving up the ladder in life in general because of the willpower that they developed from training, right? Or they face a huge obstacle in life like Greg did with cancer, and he was able to overcome it because of that habit of willpower.
Yeah, success is a habit.
I remember way back when I was in the Pan Am, so this was like 2000 because Nina was just born. So 1999 was the first one, and I couldn't run, and I used to run all the time, and so she'd be crawling on the mat. So I created this whole routine. Round 1, 7 minutes of just shrimp, belly crawl, and I did it over. And then the next one would be all the gymnastic stuff: forward rolls, backward rolls, back handspring. I just head springs, and I just do that for 7 minutes, and then I do like 3 rounds of that. That's like 20 minutes, and then I'd run around the gym, and obviously we had a teeny little gym. And that was a mental game because all of a sudden you realize, you look at the clock, oh my God, I got 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes would go by so slow because you're running around in a circle in a small gym. But to me, that was the fight. That was the battle. That was the training. Because if I was just cut it off a minute early, what am I going to do again? Am I going to cut it off a minute early tomorrow and then next day? No way. That was the battle. So learning how to fight against that inner dialogue that wants you to take it easy, that wants you to quit. And when you talk about the cancer, that was something I was so glad that I developed, that ability just to fight and fight and fight by yourself, because you are by yourself a lot. And when you fight, you're by yourself. You're in there. And it's who's mentally tougher, who's developed that consistency to push themselves, even when they didn't want to. They just came in anyways and found something to do.
Yeah.
Man, that habit is huge.
Right on. Well, that's great. So everybody, if you like the podcast, rate us on iTunes and leave us a review. And you can go to our website, theacademymn.com, and you can send us a message. Our email is info@theacademymn.com. All right.
Hey, training is the heartbeat and the heart of the martial arts.